The Wolves and Nuggets just gave us a 7-game series to remember. So many twists and turns, and ended with the Timberwolves overcoming a 20-point third quarter deficit to advance to their first conference finals since 2004.
So game 7, man. That's it. It's all the marbles. I'm sitting in the house, I'm loading up the pump, I'm loading up the Uzi, I got a couple of M16s, a couple 9s, I got a couple joints with some silencers on them. I'm just loading up clips, a couple grenades, got a missile launcher with a couple, missiles. I'm ready for war.
The Denver Nuggets entered the season as the defending champs, and for most of the season they looked like the team to beat. Nikola Jokic had another all-time great season, and in a year where so many have standout season, his was enough to secure his third MVP in 4 seasons. Of course, the Nuggets are far from a one-man show. Several of the top players at each position filled the starting 5, and Mike Malone is one of the best coaches in the league. But it's been mostly because of Jokic's unique skill set as a facilitating center that the Nuggets are such a well-oiled machine. The Timberwolves, meanwhile, had the 16th highest odds to win it all going into the season. The controversial Gobert trade was looking like a disappointment early on. Towns never developed into anything more than an all-star caliber player, and Edwards was entering his age 23 season. There were reasons to expect an improvement due to Edwards' potential, but none of us were expecting the Timberwolves to have the first seed for most of the regular season and to ultimately finish with a top 3 seed. Most of us were also not expecting the Wolves' defense to be as good as it was, even in the playoffs. Statistically, they were easily the best defense in the regular season and one of the best in recent memory. Both teams had little issues getting past their first-round opponent. The Nuggets gentlemen swept the Lakers, while the Wolves outright swept the Suns. So going into the series, no one should have expected it to be easy for either team. Sure, the Nuggets were more experienced, had home court advantage, and had the best player in the series, but the Timberwolves won almost as many games, had the better defense, and Anthony Edwards has demonstrated that he is capable of being the best player in any given series, which he arguably was in this series. Both teams were also constructed by the same guy, and in a lot of ways, the Timberwolves were designed specifically to stop a team like Denver. Both teams fought hard, but the way this series turned out is something we have never seen before and might not ever see again. Despite the Nuggets having everything in their favor in Game 1, home court, championship experience, Jokic, they did not have Anthony Edwards, as in Game 1, he made a statement, scoring 43 points on 29 shots and only 1 turnover. Mike Conley had game high plus 20, Cat had 20 on 8 of 13 shooting, and Gobert contributed to Jokic having an uncharacteristic 44% shooting night. Ultimately, Edwards, looking like the second coming of 2001 Kobe, contributed to the Wolves stealing Game 1. But no one was expecting Game 2 to end the way that it did. A defending champ can snooze and let Game 1 slip away, it happens, and plus the Wolves were to enter Game 2 without the services of their Defensive Player of the Year. No chance the Nuggets lose this, right? But the Wolves didn't want us to believe their Game 1 win was a fluke, as they blew the Nuggets out 106-80 at Denver. Both Edwards and Cat scored 27, and the Nuggets as a whole were atrocious, and even Jokic had an off game by his standards. The Wolves were gaining their respect as a top team. Edwards was being crowned the next MJ. There were even whispers that age 22 Ant was better than Mike, Kobe, and LeBron when they were 22. Has he been? That's a topic for another day. But things were getting spooky for the defending champs. Not only were they down 0-2, they also had only 2 more home games left. Jokic looked nearly invincible in his first title run and continued to look invincible against the Lakers, but he looked mortal 2 games into the miniseries. Murray looked like a star against the Lakers, but was atrocious 2 games into the series. But the Nuggets remembered who they were for the next 3 games. Not only did Denver win all 3 games, but they blew out the Wolves in 2 of them. The one that wasn't a blowout, the 115-107 Game 4, still had the Nuggets up 15 at the half. Edwards was the only Timberwolf that showed up in that Game 4, scoring 44 points on 25 shots, but in Games 3 and 5, he was underwhelming. Gobert received a lot of flack for his defense, but to be honest, I think the real issue here is that Jokic is just simply that good. In these 3 wins, Jokic averaged 33 points, 9 boards, and nearly 10 dimes while shooting 61%. Game 5 in particular was incredible, scoring 40 points, dishing 13 assists with 0 turnovers, and making the 4-time Defensive Player of the Year look helpless. Jokic even pulled off the Mikhail Hakeem-Kareem move, something I have never seen before. Now the discourse was shifting to whether Jokic is the best player we have ever seen, or at the least, whether he has secured his spot as a Pantheon caliber player. Like the previous question about Ant, that topic is for another day. The Timberwolves were suddenly the Timberpups. Ant-Man was no longer compared to MJ, and Game 6 was to be the nail in the coffin. No one told the Wolves that, as they dominated 115-70. That is not a typo. The defending champs, led by likely a top 5 offense player ever, scored 70 points in the pace and space era, in Silver's NBA. Edwards made it clear that this series was going 7. And with that dominant performance, the stage was set for Game 7 at Mile High. At first, it was competitive, but then the Nuggets began to dominate, looking like the defending champs. At one point early in the third, the Nuggets were up by 20 points. No team has ever came back from a deficit that big in a Game 7. But the Timberwolves did not give a fuck, as they clawed their way back in and made it a ball game near the end of the third. Edwards had a very off shooting night, but he made a huge 3 at the end of the third to put the Wolves down 1 entering the fourth. In the fourth quarter, both teams traded blows, and when Gobert made this insane grenade shot fadeaway, it was clear that the basketball gods wanted the Wolves to prevail. With about 3 minutes left, the Wolves forced a key defensive turnover, which led to an Edwards 3 to go up 10. It was still a winnable game for the Nuggets, but having Gobert make a tough shot and Edwards turning it into a double-digit deficit had to have been extremely demoralizing. The Wolves won 98-90 and will face off against Dallas in the conference finals. Edwards ended with 16 points on 6 of 24 shooting in a very physical, hard-fought Game 7. Very Kobe-esque, but like Kobe's Game 7 against Boston in the 2010 NBA Finals, it doesn't paint the full picture. Both of them were tightly guarded, often dealing with a tilt defense that created several wide-open shots for their teammates. Both of them were making huge stops on defense, and both of them took over in the second half. Edwards had only 1 turnover in this game to go along with 7 dimes and 8 boards. Box score watchers will pretend like both players choked, but those that watch and understand what they're watching will know that they did what all-time greats do when their shots are off, and that is to hustle, defend, and create open opportunities. Cat and McDaniels both led the Wolves in scoring with 23 apiece. Conley had an off shooting night, but also had 0 turnovers and was a game-high plus 14. For the Nuggets, Jokic and Murray both showed up, but the rest of the Nuggets went AWOL. Jokic's defense was an issue, and that is something that makes the argument that he's a top 5-10 player ever a little premature. In the meantime, Jokic is now in the middle of his annual semi-retirement from the sport, where he'll focus on his true passion, horse racing. For Ant, this playoff run has solidified himself as a superstar. Yeah, his regular season numbers may not have been the most eye-popping in this era of inflated numbers, but he's on a team with 2 7-footers clogging the paint, and one of them is not known as a floor stretcher. He's an elite two-way player, which for a perimeter player, defensive metrics will always be very unreliable. And most important of all, he enters another gear in the playoffs. That has been the case every time he's made the postseason, and this season in particular, you could argue that no one has played better in the playoffs. The last 2 times you could say that about a 22-year-old this deep into the postseason were LeBron in 2007 and Kobe in 2001. Ant is in rare company, and I really hope this view will age well and that he still belongs in that company by the end of the playoffs. So that's it. This was a great 7-game series full of twists and turns. It ended in a way most of us did not predict. In recent memory, and by that I mean since the legendary 2016 finals, the only playoff series on par with this were the 2018 Western Conference Finals, the 2019 Raptors 76ers series, and the 2021 Bucks and Nets series. But what about you guys? Is this one of the best playoff series you have seen? Let me know in the comments down below. Cyber out.